Health Minister, are you surprised at what you heard at the inquiry about Ms Peake not passing on information to Jenny McArthur?
I don't mean to disappoint you, Richard, but I'm not going to start passing comment on either evidence that was put before the inquiry. We all know the inquiry will make its decisions and its findings, and it will be handed down in due course.
We know through that inquiry that no one was really willing to put their hand up and accept ultimate responsibility for the biggest mistake. Now that it's your job and you're the chief of this system, any mistakes from here on the record, you're happy to accept responsibility. It's your fault.
Look, I'm very clear about what my accountabilities are and my responsibilities are. I am absolutely determined and focused to that end, as is the team that I work with. There is, as the Chief Health Officer outlined, in an environment where you have got a wickedly infectious virus, it is absolutely critical that you are doing everything and anything to try and stop that transmission. And the great difficulty, of course, is that we are continuing to kind of learn what the international science tells us about how to do that effectively. But I don't step back at all from my responsibilities and my accountabilities, and nor does the team that I work with.
Any mistakes? Buck stops with you?
Well, I think there's a really important, ultimately I'm accountable and I don't step back from that. But I also am very, very conscious that particularly in the provision of healthcare, one of the most important things to do is not to create a culture where people won't identify errors that they might have made or particular breaches. It's really, really important. So with that slight caveat, I don't shy from my responsibilities at all.
When did the time frame begin of this transitioning to this new system? It's months ago.
Well, there have been different components of the transition that have occurred at different times.
It began July?
The 7th of July, some responsibilities came across around mandatory quarantine. Then we later took responsibility for emergency accommodation and frontline accommodation. Most importantly, what we've been trying to do in the reset is to have a thoughtful transition that is done with its very firm focus on minimising the risk of transmission and doing that in a way that is sensible and focused. Now, I wish we could have clicked our fingers and made that happen for all of the obvious reasons, but that's not possible. What we are doing is we are seeking to try and make sure that we put in place the best protections, the workforce being protected, and making sure that we're building a culture of learning along the way where people can identify improvements. That's been a very strong feature of this culture, and I would make the following point. We have not had an active case related to our workforce for at least 4 weeks, and I think whilst the risk is always crescendoing or a product of high community transmission activity. We've certainly been the beneficiaries of the incredible work that the health system and all Victorians have delivered in terms of those lowering. But what we are increasingly satisfied with is the measures that we are putting in place to minimise those risks. But as you know, we can't extinguish all risk.